Welcome back. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the broadcaster and commentator Ali Miraj and the journalist and broadcaster Sonia Soda. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the Metro has the latest on the renewed search for Madeleine McCann in Portugal, near to where the prime suspect in her disappearance once lived. The Financial Times reports that Thames Water is on the brink of being renationalised after the company's preferred bidder backed out of a deal that would have rescued it. The Express leads with the record number of migrant arrivals in the UK as the government blames the good weather for the increase in channel crossings. Also on this story, the Mail claims data shows the Rwanda plan was working as a deterrent. The Telegraph covers the White House's spat with the BBC over its coverage of the war in Gaza. The Guardian says the Chancellor's £15 billion investment in Northern Transport is a bid to convince unsettled Labour MPs that her spending review won't be a return to austerity. And the Eye reports that Britain is stockpiling nuclear equipment and medicines to treat both military and civilians should an attack occur. We're joined tonight by Ali Miraj and Sonia Soda. Welcome to both of you. Let's start with the front page of The Guardian. The headline there, at the bottom of the page, Israeli fire kills 27 Palestinians waiting for food. And that is the story that Palestinians trekking to these humanitarian aid depots now were killed on arrival. The Israelis say that they posed a threat to them and therefore they fired.
Yeah, it's very distressing news, and it's also been verified by the International Red Cross, which talked about the number of people with injuries and the number of people dead on arrival that they received at one of its field hospitals. But essentially what's been going on is that there's been a blockade on aid, humanitarian aid, going into Gaza since March. Israel says that that's because aid has been being seized by Hamas and being used for their own purposes and isn't reaching the civilian population of Gaza. There's obviously, a lot of disagreement over that, but aid has not been going in. You've had organisations like the UN, but other international organisations issue the strongest criticism and condemnation of Israel over this, because what they're saying is essentially, this is almost a siege of civilians, and you've now got a citizenry that is at risk of starvation. But what's happened is that there's now an American-Israeli organisation called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that has been set up to put some aid into Gaza. It's still been criticised by the UN because it says that it cannot give enough food. It cannot meet the requirements of the Gazan population. But you've had this aid distributed at certain centres within Gaza. And I mean, the problem seems to be that there just isn't enough. And, children are hungry and parents are going to try and get aid, even though they know it's dangerous, and there is unrest. And Israel has, reportedly opened fire on Gazans who are trying to get food aid. Now, obviously, Israel is saying, well, our soldiers were under threat because they were being approached. People were outside of safe corridors. But I think it just shows how terrible the situation in Gaza is.
And Ali, there's been much criticism of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the fact that, people who are on the brink of starvation, malnourished, have to trek to these centres. And in the 3 days that they've been opened, we've seen people killed at those sites.
Well, it's already being reported in The Guardian that 27 Palestinians have been killed today. Just a couple of days ago, it was 30. Now, I know that the US administration's hitting back, saying that some of these claims on the numbers are not accurate. We know that people have died. And part of the problem is that the Israeli government is not allowing independent journalists in to verify some of these figures. Now, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which Sonia's referenced as the new body that distributes this aid, it's done by American people who are involved in this. The head of that resigned only a week ago on the basis that he could not guarantee the humanity, neutrality, impartiality and independence of the very body that is meant to distribute this aid. Now, if you've got 4 hubs in an area of Gaza where people are having to basically walk through war zones to go and get food, you're going to have problems. People are going in the middle of the night, they're queuing from 2 in the morning, thing doesn't open for hours later. And then you've got Volker Turk, the UN humanitarian chief, who's saying that this shows an utter disregard for civilians. And you've got the broader context here of what Israel now is trying to do. We all understand that Israel has a right to defend itself. I've said that myself consistently. But now you're seeing friends of Israel, France, the UK and Canada being much more openly critical of Israel, and also the general plan, which is effectively to do land acquisition here. I mean, you've got an issue here where people are starving. People are now dying in this rush for food. It's a very, very dangerous situation, and people are wondering what the end game is, what the strategy of the Israelis is, other than now to acquire Palestinian land.
The aid centres, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, they put out a statement to say that they will actually be closed tomorrow. They've said for administration reasons, but presumably they too now acknowledge that this is simply not the way to get aid to the people.
And I mean, I think we have to go back to the UN distributing it. You know, if some aid ends up in the hands of Hamas, well, that is the price that you have to pay for not punishing a civilian population for the actions of a terrorist group that rules up that part of, that rules Gaza.
Let's move to the Telegraph, because the White House, when discussing this attack at the humanitarian aid hub, the Caroline Levitt, the press officer, was saying that really they cannot verify the figures of the 27 Palestinians that have been killed, and she brought in the BBC, saying that they've been extremely biased and criticised them quite severely.
So it is true that the BBC has had to make some important corrections in recent days over its coverage, and that, of course, follows the documentary that was made about Gaza, which was found to have input from, people linked to Hamas. That was an incredibly embarrassing episode for the BBC, and I think, heads have rolled over it. But they've also had to correct this claim that was made by Tom Fletcher, the UN's humanitarian chief, which they reported on the Today programme, that 14,000 babies in Gaza could die within 48 hours. Now, that is not correct. Actually, what the figure was that 14,000 children are at risk of severe malnutrition, which is obviously different. So, to be fair, there have been instances where the BBC has had to correct its coverage, and it looks like it has taken too quickly claims at face value that it should have verified itself. But I would come back to this point that Ali made, which is that Israel is not allowing journalists into Gaza to verify for themselves. And that makes it quite difficult for news organisations, because it means that you're getting figures from, Hamas ministries, the Hamas Ministry of Health, and it is difficult to verify these figures sometimes. You do have international organisations that can do that sometimes. So it's a tricky situation that journalistic organisations are in, and that is partly on Israel.
Yeah. I mean, I just think one has to question, why is Israel not allowing people in? I mean, these are professional journalists from multiple news organisations around the world. Their duty is to go and report what they find. Without fear or favour.
Question to an Israeli representative today, and his response is that their priority is not to get Sky News journalists into Gaza, it's to get the hostages out. That's their priority. That was his response.
Sky News journalists and any other journalists will take care of themselves, and they'll do it at their own risk, as they always do in war zones. It's not the first war zone that international journalists will have reported from, and it won't be the last. So I'm afraid that the Israelis can't have it both ways. I mean, you either allow international journalists in to verify these claims themselves, or you're going to have to rely on the Hamas Health-run ministry, where there's a debate about the numbers. And obviously, the BBC has had some issues, and the Trump administration is playing hardball with news outlets, as it does anyway. So it doesn't exactly help the credibility of Western journalists when they can't go and verify what's going on the ground themselves firsthand.
Sonia, just because of time, we've only got about a minute left in this section. Let's talk about the spending review in terms of defence. The Telegraph front page, NATO will force Britain to spend 3.5% on defence, and this is without Sir Keir Starmer even really committing to the 3%.
That's right. So we're not even at 2.5% yet, and the plan is to get there by 2027. So we had the Strategic Defence Review this week. It's coming for quite a lot of criticism, actually, the government's review, because it didn't set out a long-term plan to get to these targets. 3% feels very far off, given the fiscal constraints on the Chancellor. You know, there's lots of other stories about that on the front pages. But NATO are saying, actually, countries like Britain have to step up and do 3.5%. And that is going to be extremely challenging when there isn't even a roadmap to the 3%.
You're going to have to choose between weapons or welfare, ultimately, and this is very difficult because the Chancellor is in a really, really tight fiscal bind. She's got people nipping at her heels from all over the place, and it's very, very tough. And you've got, 2.5% is basically not even an amuse-bouche at a French restaurant. It's not a serious starting point. I mean, you're talking about 3.5% at a minimum. Some of the countries on the eastern flank of NATO in Europe are spending 4.5%, you know, the ones in the front line. And we keep talking a good game about supporting Ukraine. We're dwindling. Our troop numbers are low. And we don't even have, you heard about this coalition of the willing force that we were meant to be putting on the ground. It's all gone rather quiet because the reality is we talk tough, but we don't have the troops to back up what we're saying with actual efforts on the ground. OK,
Ali and Sonia, thank you very much for the moment. We're going to take a break. Coming up, is good weather rather than government policy to blame for the increased number of migrants crossing the Channel? We'll discuss that next.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Omdurman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
we've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Ali Miraj and Sonia Soda. Let's take a look at the Express front page regarding channel crossings, and Labour are blaming record migrant crosses on better weather in the channel. Ali.
It's getting worse. There are now over 11,000 asylum seekers that have come to the UK in small boats from January, which is up on 7,500 a year ago. And they're blaming it on good weather. I mean, this is the equivalent of the dog ate my homework excuse from the government here. I mean, look, we were told that Starmer was going to smash the gangs. This was the rhetoric that we were told. It's not an easy problem. All European countries are dealing with it. But the government told us it had a plan, and it clearly doesn't have a plan. Now, a lot of people were very upset about the Rwanda plan because it offended sensibilities and all the rest. And it would have never sent all these asylum seekers abroad. It was meant to be a fraction, but that fraction was meant to be there as a deterrent. Now, whether it would have worked or not, we don't know, because it was never tried. But what we do know is that when they were interviewing people in Calais just beforehand, the people were quaking in their boots about the fact that this Rwanda plan would come in. Now, we don't know exactly what would have happened, but what we know now is that the Rwanda plan's been scrapped and the numbers are going up.
And Sonia, the Mail is suggesting that the data indicates that the Rwanda scheme was actually deterring arrivals.
I mean, I don't buy that for a second. There's quite a lot of research that was suggesting that the Rwanda plan wasn't going to be a deterrent, not least because the fraction of migrants that would have been deported was so tiny anyway, and it was a huge expense, hundreds of millions of pounds. Most experts thought it was basically just kind of pie in the sky, the Conservatives flinging money at sort of trying to make it look like they were doing something. I think what Chris Phil is talking about here is just looking at data that suggests that when the Rwanda that crossings were lower when the Rwanda plan was sort of in the works. But the issue with that is that it fluctuates a lot during the year, and it's got nothing to do with government policy. Weather is significant, we know that, and that happened during the Conservatives as well. When the weather is good, there are more crossings that are attempted to be made because the weather is good and the sea is calmer. That is just a fact. It's also true that numbers are going up over time. The truth is, Ali is right that the Labour government promised to do something about it in the same way that the Conservatives did and never succeeded.
Very true.
The truth is that these numbers are not affected very much by government policy. They're affected by push factors, by factors like the weather, and it is a very, very difficult issue to crack. And we do need to crack it because it's a very dangerous crossing, but I do think we should keep the numbers of people coming to the UK to claim asylum in perspective. We still have fewer numbers of people coming to the UK to claim asylum than a country like France has, for example. So it is important to keep it in that perspective.
I understand that point. The thing I find a little bit odd here is that we don't police our border effectively at all. People who come in, they're not tagged in any way. So a lot of the people who are going through the asylum process, thousands of them disappear into the ether, never to be found again, which conceptually is utterly bizarre. So someone comes to your border, they come on a boat, they come here, you put them up in a hotel, fine. Then you work them through the asylum system, and 17,000 people just disappear into the ether. I find it completely odd.
So you're suggesting they should be tagged?
They should be tagged. We know nothing about these people. We have no idea why they're here, what their backgrounds are, nothing. And if they're working themselves through a system, many of them will be going into the underground economy. Many of them might be victims of modern slavery because they're being brought across by people who are being paid a fair crack to smuggle them across illegally to this country. We have no idea where they're going, and none of them are tagged. I do find it conceptually outlandish that we're in this position.
Very quickly, we've only got about
the thing is
minute. I was going to move on to our final story, the Telegraph, which is that white Britons will be in the minority in 40 years' time. Says
Yeah,
who?
so I mean, this is the last in a line of studies that's projecting forwards, looking at kind of Britain's multicultural status. You know, like other reports, this report is saying that in 40 years' time, white Britons will be in a minority. That's not necessarily a bad thing, could be a good thing, but I think what it does, it definitely raises policy questions around integration and making sure that we're all living harmoniously together side by side. And you know, back in the sort of 2000s, integration policy was a thing. I'm not so sure that it is now.
Sonia and Ali, we must leave it there. Thank you both very much. Let's take a look at the weather for you now.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, it's looking unsettled for a while yet, with widespread showers or more prolonged rain, but the south looks drier next week. Northern parts will have a windy and showery start tomorrow, while southern areas will be mainly dry. It'll be quite cool, even chilly in parts of the north. Showers will develop widely through the morning, concentrated in the north and west, where they'll be heavy in places. In between, there'll be bright or sunny spells. It'll stay on the cool side and rather blustery.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Coming up next on Sky News at 11, calls for an independent investigation after people came under Israeli fire while trying to get food in Gaza.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.